Okay, good morning. How are you guys? Who knows the name of that song that was playing when you walked in? Yes, Respect, or R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I like it. It's easy to remember the name of the song because they literally spell it out for you, right? So this morning, I feel like this is a little loud, but if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. I'll just stand here. It's a little loud, yeah. We're going to talk about respect, and we're going to talk about respect and diversity. And Channing and I were visiting last week, and she mentioned this wouldn't be the first time this topic had come up. And I don't want to be up here droning on like the voice from Charlie Brown when it's wah, 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 wah. You know what I mean? You're just sitting there, and it's just, washing over you and meaning nothing. So let me talk about what we're not going to talk about. We're not going to talk about tolerance. We're not going to talk about putting up with one another. Dare I say that what we are going to talk about has more to do with the word embrace, which happens to be a theme for the year, right? And I had that song playing when you walked in for another reason, which is that the tone of a talk about a subject like this should not be one of kind of finger wagging, or this is just kind of a bummer of a task that we have in front of us. It should feel like an opportunity, like something that's a little bit exciting and energizing. And I hope by the end of the remarks today that I can carry through on that promise, that this would be something that ought to excite us. It's about reminding ourselves of the incredible opportunity and privilege we have as students here, as faculty here, and staff, as human beings, to encounter one another. And if we are indeed here to learn and grow, then the single greatest resource available to us in that process is the people in this room right now. That's your best asset in that project, okay? It's about this, what I call this beautiful mishmash, right? There's not one type here. It's the coming together of everybody who's here and every last little thing that they bring with them. That's our asset, okay? So the other thing is that the opening lyrics of that song say, "What you want, baby, I got it." So I want you to think, you ought to be saying that, I guess metaphorically, to one another here, right? What you are looking for, I have. And what I'm looking for, you have. Okay? So, the word respect, if you want to get into the etymology, as I like to in life, has these two parts. I'm going to talk about the spect part first, and then the re part. Okay? So what does the spect part mean? What might any ideas? Just shout them out. Eyes has to do with eyes and seeing. Great, we'll go with that, okay? We look, we see one another. And when we see one another and understand one another with that seeing, really cool things happen. Let me tell you two quick examples from my life. I used to volunteer at a place called the Center for the Homeless in South Bend, and then I really liked it, so I ended up working there for 5 years. But when I got there, I was not doing it, I guess I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart, but I also just wanted to meet people who weren't like me, because I thought I wanted to be a writer, and I felt like if all the human beings I encounter are from my similar background, it ain't gonna work that well, right? So here I am working at the front desk of this place, getting to know people who have a different life than I do. And one of the guests that I got to know was a young man named Jason. And Jason, on the surface, you would say probably had almost nothing in common with me, okay? He grew up in very tough circumstances, in foster care, passed around and around and around. He had some learning delays. And one day I'm visiting with him at the front desk. "What are you up to today, Jason?" And he pulled out this thing that he had made in like an occupational therapy class called a God's Eye. Anybody know what that is? This is like grade school craft type thing, right? You take two popsicle sticks, you glue them together like a cross, and then you take yarn of different colors and you make these diamonds that go out, right? So I said, tell me about the God's eye you made. And Jason said, well, there's green and blue and gold. And he said that the green represents a beautiful pasture, a beautiful field. Okay, and he had grown up in a location where he would have been able to see some of that. He said the blue is the blue of the bluest ocean. Jason's never seen the ocean. He's never traveled to the ocean. He was using his imagination to think about what that would be. And he said, and the gold is the crown of God. And the perspective that he had, that he showed me about using my imagination, about thinking about what I can see and what I can't see, I never would have started thinking that way. And he did that for me. And this is a guy, if I ran into him on the street, very low odds I would end up speaking with him if I weren't in this context. He taught me something about myself. Example 2. My wife and I used to live in Cambodia, and we were running an educational nonprofit there. And a couple of our staff members were former monks. And 2 of them were named Chuni and Yut. And I was learning about their faith and their perspective in the world, and I was going through something. My sister had to have a medical procedure done, and I really wished I could be there for it, but I was literally on the other side of the world, literally. If you went any further, I would have gotten closer, right? And so I was talking to Chuni and Yut, and because of the time difference being 12 hours, the procedure was going to happen at like 11 a.m. in the United States, so it was late at night. And they got together, and the 3 of us just sat there, and they taught me this process where I was breathing with my sister. I wasn't with her in terms of proximity, but I was breathing with and for her, and they taught me that. It never would have occurred to me. I've used it 1,000 times since. And again, these are people, right, Chuni and Yut, that have made me who I am, that are completely different from me. And if I just walk past them on the street, they might just go in a category for me of somebody who doesn't speak my language or someone who has a different background from me. And if I weren't afforded the opportunity to get to know them and understand them and have them teach me and me teach them, then I wouldn't be who I am today. Okay? Those are just 2 quick examples of probably 1,000 that I could give you, and you probably have your own examples. And that's a very important point to make. I think sometimes we talk about this being a college prep school. I'm not a huge fan of that, because one of the problems with labeling it college prep is this subtle signal that you're prepping for something that's going to happen to you later. And you're just getting ready for later. Your life is right now. Our life is right now. That's all we know we have for sure is today. So when I'm giving those examples I don't want you to think, well, later in life, maybe I'll have that type of example. You can do this today at lunch, okay, of a similar type of project. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, let's talk about the first half of the word respect, re. Okay, who thinks they might know what re means? What's that? Again, this is what I thought it meant this morning. And then I used the internet. And it turns out, I guess at least in this context, that the re means back. So respect actually literally involves a process of looking back. This was surprising to me, because I think like 80% of the use of re in any other situation means again, but okay, it means back, okay? So let's anybody seen The Lion King? Okay, so let's follow this looking back thing for a moment. Looking back to the beginning of our lives, looking back to who we are and where we come from. So Rafiki, remember Rafiki? He takes Simba and he says, "Come, look." And then they part these plants and they look in and he's going to show Simba something, and then Simba sees it's just a reflection of himself and he's down. And then Rafiki says, look harder, right? And then Simba's doing that, and what does he see? He sees his father, he sees where he's come from, and it helps him understand who he is, okay? So I want to share you a story of when Soren, my oldest son, was born, and I hope it's something that you each get to experience. But when you behold a baby, it's your baby, the amount of love and respect that you have for that thing will blow your mind. And I remember having this moment in the fog that is the first days of being a parent when you get no sleep, of realizing that every human being that I have ever met or will ever meet is somebody's baby. And at some point, they were and are loved in that way. And it might change the way, it could change the way that we look at and treat one another. Pope Francis has a better way of saying it than I do. He says, in the soul of every child, no matter how vulnerable, God puts the seal of his love, which is the basis of his or her dignity, a dignity that nothing or no one can destroy. So, for this to work, we have to do two things, okay? We have to acknowledge this fact about each person we meet and let it blow our minds. But there's a really important other part, which is we also have to believe it about ourselves. So, if we can work on that, what will happen? When we believe that about others and we open ourselves to experiencing them, we will actually learn about ourselves. We will come to know ourselves, and it's this virtuous cycle. Because then we're more comfortable with ourselves. We're more comfortable sharing with one another in an encounter. And when we share with one another, we learn more about ourselves, and it just keeps going, okay? Did you guys happen to, I don't know if you watched much of the Olympics, but there was this shot on an iPhone commercial from Apple that involved Maya Angelou reciting a poem, and it was just a bunch of really cool pictures that were taken on an iPhone, although in the bottom in really small script it says, you know, there were other devices that were attached to the phones to take these pictures, but you have to look really closely to see that. Anyway, I'd love to just show you the commercial, but I'm not endorsing a product right now, so I'm just going to read you the poem and sometime go watch the commercial or try to find a file of Maya Angelou reading this poem, because it's better than me reading it. But here we go. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious. Some thrive on comedy. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe. And lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China. We weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, In major, we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. So one last thing to lay on you, and then we'll wrap up. There's a saying, namaste, which I learned about when I was taking a yoga class, and as happens with a lot of translations, there's a bunch of ways to translate it. It's one word. In English, it tends to take us a lot more words to get at a meaning. One of the things that I heard that it means is the light in me greets the light in you. I tie that back into the name of this school being a particularly interesting and powerful name, talking about the light. So there's no shortcut to what I'm talking about. There's no grand gesture. There's no way that you can walk out of here and achieve this thing and be done with it. This is a project of 1,000 little actions, decisions, conversations. It probably involves slowing down for a second, maybe getting one less thing done, maybe doing our work slightly less efficiently. It's why I'm meeting one-on-one with every single person who works here and every single person who goes to school here. There is no quick way to do that. If you look at my calendar, you'll see that this is insane, and I don't care because there isn't anything more important. And usually, if you decide to start doing something, you also have to stop doing something because you can't, unless the thing you start doing is manufacturing more time, in which case, come see me and we'll do a deal, okay? So maybe it's a little bit less Snapchat. Maybe it's a little bit less, for me, a little bit less words with friends. I don't know if that's cool anymore or if it ever was cool, but I'm still doing it, and maybe I need to dial it back so I have more time for one more conversation with one of you. So that I can get to know you and encounter you and become a better version of myself. So, we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Thank you.